Before we start the video, let me tell you something important. If you're torn between the Samsung A35 and the Samsung A55, the clear answer is to go for the A35. There's no need to spend an extra $100 to get the A55. The reasons for this will be explained in the video, so stay tuned until the end. Currently, the phone is priced at around $230 for the 128GB version and $250 for the 256GB version, both coming with 8GB of RAM. I've used the phone for about 2 weeks, and in this video, I'll divide the review as follows. First, I'll tell you about the 6 best features that impressed me and why I recommend the A35 over the A55. Then, I'll talk about my experience with important aspects such as the battery, fingerprint sensor, call quality, and more. Lastly, I'll mention 5 drawbacks or issues you might not like about the Samsung A35. But, as usual before we begin, I'd like you to hit the like button as it helps the video reach more people. And if this is your first time watching me, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Let's start with the key features, and the first one is the design. Let me tell you that the A35 and A55 have the exact same design, with only one difference that I'll mention later. The front comes with a large 6.6-inch screen and a punch hole notch in the middle, with the same bezel size. The bezels aren't the thinnest, but they're acceptable on a $230 phone. However, they're harder to justify on a $350 phone. Now, let's talk about the back of the phone, which is something we've seen a lot from Samsung in the past 2 years. The back is flat, completely plain, with strong reflections under light, and 3 rear cameras aligned vertically without a surrounding frame. But here's the surprise. The back of the A35 is made of glass, just like the A55. So, the front and back of both phones are identical in terms of design, size, and materials. The only difference in design is the material of the outer frame. The A35 has a plastic frame, while the A55 has a metal frame. The phone's thickness is reasonable at 8.2 mm, which is the same as the A55. The phone's weight isn't light as it exceeds 200 grams. However, the most important point in terms of design, where Samsung excels in the mid-range category, is the water and dust resistance. The A35 is Samsung's cheapest phone in 2024 to support IP67 water and dust resistance, just like the A55. As you can see, the two phones are identical in design, with the only difference being the frame material, which definitely doesn't justify spending an extra $100. The second strong feature is something Samsung has been leading in for a long time: the display. It's the same size and specifications as the A55's display, 6.6 inches, Super AMOLED, Full HD resolution, and 120 Hz refresh rate. The specs say that HDR is available on the A55, but not on the A35. However, I found the HDR option available when changing video resolution, so I'm not sure what's true regarding HDR if that matters to you. What should really matter to you is the viewing experience, and we won't discuss it much. Samsung displays are known for their very vibrant colors, detailed imagery, and high pixel density. Whether you're browsing, watching videos, or playing games, you'll love the screen. One of its key strengths is its brightness, which reaches 1000 nits. I found 30% brightness sufficient indoors, so you won't have any issues with it in sunlight. The 120 Hz refresh rate is very noticeable in the smoothness of transitions, and of course Samsung is the pioneer of this feature, which you'll find present in the phone. So, regarding the display, there's no difference between the two phones. However, the next point is where you'll find a difference. But is it worth it? Let's find out together. The A35's strength lies in its processor and performance. While some people don't prefer Exynos processors, let me share my experience with it on this phone. The processor is the Exynos 1380 with 8GB of RAM. It's a 5G processor built on a 5nm process, the same one used in last year's Samsung A54. In terms of power, it's on par with other processors in the same price range. The processor is powerful, and its benchmarks are excellent. Its Antutu score is slightly higher than the Dimensity 1080 used in the previous A34 model. After using the phone for 2 weeks, I didn't encounter any issues. Browsing is fast and smooth, and apps open quickly. The software runs on Android 14 with Samsung's One UI 6.1, which comes with all its features. Another strong point is that Samsung supports updates for 4 years on Android and 5 years on the UI, so in terms of performance and software, everything is stable. However, there's a note I want to mention. When the phone is under heavy load, like when playing games, you'll notice it gets quite warm on the back. Does this heat affect performance? The answer is no. Performance remains stable without any issues. Moreover, gaming on this phone is one of its strongest features. The powerful processor runs PUBG at HDR and ultra frame rate, and you can play at 60 frames per second if you lower the graphics. The same goes for Call of Duty. Of course, the high graphics combined with a large, vibrant screen and powerful speaker, which we'll discuss shortly, all together provide a very enjoyable gaming experience. The processor in the A55 is also an Exynos, specifically the Exynos 1480, which is slightly better than the A35. The Exynos 1380 processor in the A35 isn't different enough from the A55s to justify spending an extra $100, especially since you'd still be getting an Exynos processor. If Samsung had used a Snapdragon or MediaTek processor, that would have been a strong reason to upgrade to the A55. But, as things stand, the A35 is the right choice. Now, let's move on to the fourth strong point of this phone, the speaker. Just like the A34's speaker impressed me, the A35's speaker impressed me as well. It's a stereo speaker, and the sound distribution between the two speakers is excellent. The sound is loud, with good quality and lots of detail. Additionally, the Dolby Atmos feature is available and works with the speaker, enhancing both sound quality and volume. Among its competitors, the speaker could easily score 9 out of 10. And it's not just the speaker that's impressive. Samsung also included the same advanced vibration motor from the A34, which provides smart vibration patterns or haptic feedback in response to your touches on the screen. The fifth strong point, where Samsung also excels, is the camera performance. Clearly, one of the advantages of Exynos processors in Samsung phones is that they produce better colors than Snapdragon or MediaTek processors, which are also good, but you'll usually find Exynos produces more vibrant and richer colors. The primary rear camera is 50 megapixels, and the ultra-wide is 8 megapixels. The primary camera, in particular, will give you photos that you'll really like, with lots of detail, and Samsung's vibrant yet realistic color reproduction. The portrait mode gives the photo a nice look with excellent results in low light, and using the night mode will significantly enhance the quality and brightness of the photos, especially with the ultra-wide camera, which makes a big difference in the final image. But what's impressive about this phone is that the colors are great, not only in the rear camera, but also in the selfie camera. It's 13 megapixels, and provides excellent processing at this price point. The details are rich, skin tones are realistic and vibrant, and the images are not washed out at all. Its performance in low light is decent, though not as good as the rear camera. However, the night mode works with it and makes a slight improvement in the results. For still photos, the phone is excellent in my opinion, with the most important cameras being the primary rear camera and the selfie camera. But the strongest and most important feature in the camera department is the video recording capabilities and optical stabilization, which we'll look at together now. This is video recording with the Samsung A35. The phone records video with both the rear and front cameras at up to 4K resolution at 30 frames per second. Right now, we're recording at 4K resolution with only optical stabilization enabled, without electronic stabilization. Now we've activated electronic stabilization, which also works up to 4K resolution. Naturally, electronic stabilization provides stronger stabilization than optical stabilization, which is completely normal. There's also electronic stabilization available for video recording with the selfie cameras, but it crops or zooms in on the image as we can see. One of the impressive features of this phone, which surprised me, is the inclusion of the PRO video feature, which works up to 4K resolution. As we can see, we've finished discussing the strong points, and now we'll move on to my experience with some important aspects, like the fingerprint sensor, battery life, call quality, and others. But before we dive into those, I want to remind you to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video if you haven't already. Let's start with the fingerprint sensor's performance. As is the case with most Samsung phones, the fingerprint sensor is under the display, and although it works, it's not the fastest on the market. When you place your finger on the sensor, it takes about a second or less to unlock the phone, so I'd rate the sensor's performance as good, but not exceptional. However, keep in mind that the fingerprint sensor's performance might vary slightly based on the angle at which you place your finger, and the same applies to the A55. Now, let's move on to the battery, which has a 5000 mAh capacity and supports 25W fast charging. As is typical with Samsung's mid-range phones, the battery is more than sufficient to last you a full day. The battery life is excellent, and in my experience, it easily lasted a full day of moderate to heavy usage. The only drawback, in my opinion, is the 25W charging speed, which isn't the fastest at this price point. But you'll get similar charging speeds with the A55 as well. Next is the call quality. The earpiece is loud and clear, and I didn't face any issues with call quality. The microphone is also good, but I wouldn't say it's exceptional. To wrap up, here are the 5 drawbacks or issues with the Samsung A35 that you should be aware of. First, the fingerprint sensor's performance is good, but it could be better, especially in terms of speed. Second, the charging speed is only 25W, which isn't the fastest for a phone in this price range. Third, the phone can get warm during heavy usage, especially when playing games. Fourth, there's no dedicated macro or telephoto camera, so if you're into close-up or zoom photography, you might feel limited. Finally, the outer frame is made of plastic, which might not feel as premium as the metal frame on the A55. However, these drawbacks are relatively minor. And overall, the Samsung A35 is an excellent choice, especially when you consider the $100 savings compared to the A55. So, my final verdict is that the Samsung A35 offers great value for money, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for a mid-range phone with excellent performance, display, and camera capabilities.